My dad's new wife destroyed my mom's garden for her son's basketball court, converted my room into an office without asking me, and manipulated my dad into replacing me with her son. I, 19 male, need help figuring out if I'm being unreasonable about my situation with my dad, 45 male. The whole story goes back a few years, but I'll try to explain everything clearly. My mom passed away from breast cancer when I was 13. She was the backbone of our family, someone who made every day special in small ways. She was diagnosed when I was 11, and those 2 years of her illness were the hardest of our lives. Before she got sick, she was always active, coaching my elementary school soccer team, organizing neighborhood events, and somehow managing to work full-time as a kindergarten teacher. She made the most amazing mac and cheese from scratch, and I still remember how the whole house would smell like heaven when she made it. The day we found out about her cancer, I had just won my first soccer tournament. Mom had been feeling tired lately but still came to every game. After the final match, instead of celebrating, we ended up in the ER because she collapsed in the parking lot. That's when they found the tumor. It had already spread. Those 2 years were a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and watching Mom slowly fade away. Dad took time off work to care for her, and I started spending a lot of time at my Uncle Rob's, 43 male, house. He's Mom's younger brother, and he and Aunt Maria, 41 female, lived about an hour away. They didn't have kids of their own but always treated me like their son. After Mom died, Dad and I grew incredibly close. He was determined to keep her memory alive. He learned to cook all my favorite meals, though his mac and cheese was nowhere near Mom's level, never missed a soccer game, and even took over Mom's tradition of making special birthday scavenger hunts for me. We had our own traditions too. Every Sunday was football day. We'd order pizza, watch the games, and he'd tell me stories about Mom from when they were young. Dad kept all of Mom's things exactly as they were. Her garden, which was her pride and joy, became our joint project. Every spring, we'd plant the same flowers she loved, tulips, daisies, and her favorite purple irises. Her recipe box stayed in its special place in the kitchen, and we'd try to make her recipes together, even though they never turned out quite right. Everything changed when Dad met Melissa, 38 female, at work 3 years ago. She was the new HR manager, and within months, they were dating. At first, I was okay with it. Mom had been gone for 2 years, and I thought maybe it was time for Dad to find happiness again. Melissa seemed nice enough in the beginning. She brought homemade cookies, store-bought dough, but I didn't say anything, asked about my interests, and tried to include me in their plans. Then her kids moved in, Tyler, 16 male, and Ashley, 14 female. That's when our house turned into chaos. Our 3-bedroom home suddenly felt tiny. Dad insisted I share my room with Tyler because he was older than Ashley and needed his space. Tyler was a nightmare roommate. He would use my things without asking, mess with my soccer gear, and never cleaned up after himself. Once, he even spilled soda all over my mom's old sketchbook that I kept by my bed. He just shrugged it off like it was nothing. Dad started changing too. He began missing my soccer games because Tyler had basketball practice or games. Our Sunday football tradition became a family bonding time, but it wasn't the same. Tyler would dominate every conversation, talking about his basketball stats and school drama. When I tried to share something about my day, Melissa would somehow turn the conversation back to Tyler's accomplishments or Ashley's dance recitals. The house started changing too. Melissa redecorated everything, saying it needed a woman's touch. Mom's recipe box disappeared into a cabinet because it cluttered the counter. The garden we maintained in Mom's memory was torn up for a basketball half-court because Tyler needed a place to practice. When I got upset about it, Dad said I was being selfish and that we needed to make room for everyone's interests. Then came the room situation. 6 months ago, Dad and Melissa decided they needed a home office. Guess whose room they chose to convert? Mine. Their reasoning was that since Tyler and I were already sharing, it made sense to make it permanent and move me into the smaller guest room. They didn't even ask me first. I came home from soccer practice one day to find my things packed in boxes. The final straw was my high school graduation. Mom and I had always talked about my graduation day. She made me promise that no matter what happened, I would wear the watch her dad gave her when she graduated. She kept it in a special box with a letter for me. I had been saving it all these years, but when I went to get it from Dad's closet where we kept Mom's special things, I couldn't find it. Turns out, Melissa had done a clean out of old things and donated everything she thought we didn't need anymore. Dad's reaction was what hurt the most. He just said we could buy a new watch, that it was just a thing and I needed to stop living in the past. During the graduation party, which Melissa took over completely, ignoring my request to make some of Mom's recipes, Dad gave a speech about how proud he was of his eldest son and how grateful he was that Melissa and her kids had completed our family. Mom's name wasn't mentioned once. That night, I called Uncle Rob. I couldn't take it anymore. He and Aunt Maria immediately offered me a place to stay. I packed my things while everyone was asleep and left a note for Dad. I could have said a lot of things, but I just wrote that I was leaving and not to look for me. Since then, I've been living with Uncle Rob and Aunt Maria. They helped me enroll in community college and have supported me in every way. Dad has been calling and texting constantly. Melissa too, saying how hurt Tyler and Ashley are, how I'm tearing the family apart. But what family? The one where my mom's memory was being erased piece by piece? I blocked them all on social media and changed my number. Some relatives say I'm being too harsh, that Dad deserves another chance. But I can't forget how easily he let Melissa erase every trace of Mom, how he chose his new family over the memory of his old one. Ida for cutting contact? Should I give them another chance? Update 1. It's been 3 months since my original post. Thank you all for your support and advice. Writing everything out helped me realize I wasn't crazy for feeling the way I did. Life with Uncle Rob and Aunt Maria has settled into a comfortable routine, but dealing with Dad and his family hasn't been easy. The day after I left, Dad showed up at Uncle Rob's house. He was angry at first, demanding I come home. When that didn't work, he switched to guilt tripping, talking about how Tyler was struggling with basketball because he was so upset about me leaving. Uncle Rob had to threaten to call the police before Dad would leave. The harassment didn't stop there. Dad tried everything to contact me. He created new social media accounts after I blocked his old ones, got colleagues to pass messages to me, and even started showing up at places he knew I might be. His messages were a roller coaster. One minute he'd be apologizing, promising things would be different. The next he'd be telling me how ungrateful and selfish I was being. Melissa launched her own campaign. She started telling family members that I was mentally unstable, that I had always been jealous of Tyler and Ashley, and that I needed professional help. She claimed I had been hostile to her kids from the start and that she had tried everything to make me feel included. Some relatives actually believed her, probably because they only saw the perfect blended family image she worked so hard to maintain. The truth started coming out when my cousin Danny, 17M, stayed with them for a week. He witnessed how Tyler had taken over my old room, throwing out or damaging things that meant a lot to me. Danny found pieces of Mom's old journals in the trash and secretly salvaged what he could. He told me how Dad would get defensive whenever someone mentioned Mom or me, while Melissa would quickly change the subject. Things got worse when Dad started showing up at my workplace. I got a job at a local bookstore, and he would come in during my shifts, trying to force conversations. My manager was understanding at first, but after Dad caused a scene that scared away customers, she had to ban him from the store. That's when he started waiting in the parking lot. The final straw came when Dad showed up drunk at Uncle Rob's house at 2 a.m. He was crying about how much he missed me, but in the same breath, he was defending Melissa and blaming me for breaking up the family. He said things about Mom that I can't even repeat, horrible things about how she would be ashamed of me, how she would want me to accept my new family. Uncle Rob recorded the whole incident on his phone. That recording, along with screenshots of all the harassing messages and statements from my workplace, helped us get a restraining order. The day Dad was served the papers, Melissa called every relative she could, painting me as a vindictive son trying to punish my father for finding happiness again. Some family members took their side, especially Dad's sister Aunt Linda, 47F, who always thought Mom had spoiled me. But others started seeing through the act. My grandmother, Dad's mom, finally visited me after getting a call from Melissa. She was expecting to find a troubled teenager but instead found me doing well in school, working part-time, and living in a stable environment. She spent hours looking through the things Danny had salvaged from the trash, including torn pages from Mom's journals and broken pieces of photo frames that had been accidentally damaged during the move to the home office. The most surprising development came when Tyler reached out through a mutual friend. His message was long and complicated. He admitted that their moving in hadn't been as innocent as it seemed. Melissa had encouraged him to take up more of Dad's time, to insert himself into our traditions. She told him it would help us bond as brothers, but looking back, he realized she was trying to replace me. He apologized for going along with it, especially for the incident with Mom's sketchbook. Apparently, the soda spill wasn't an accident. Melissa had suggested he needed more desk space for his basketball trophies. I didn't respond to Tyler's message. Maybe he was genuinely sorry, but it didn't change anything. The damage was done. Every time I think about possibly forgiving Dad, I remember how he stood by while every trace of Mom was systematically erased from our home. How he watched me lose not just my mother's memory, but my place in my own family. Uncle Rob and Aunt Maria continue to be amazing. They never make me feel like a burden. They've even started talking about helping me transfer to a 4-year college next year. For now, I'm focusing on my studies, working at the bookstore, and slowly rebuilding my life. It's not perfect, but it's mine. Update 2. It's been 6 months since my last update, and things have taken some unexpected turns. Last month, I ran into Ashley at the mall. I was buying new soccer cleats when I saw her at the sports store. For a moment, we just stared at each other awkwardly. She looked different, thinner, more serious. After some hesitation, she asked if we could talk. We ended up sitting in the food court for nearly 2 hours. The perfect family image Melissa worked so hard to maintain was crumbling. Dad started drinking heavily after the restraining order. He would miss work, forget to pick up Tyler from basketball practice, and get into arguments with neighbors. The basketball court that replaced Mom's garden became unused after Tyler quit the team. Apparently, Dad's drunk heckling at games became too much to handle. Ashley told me they converted my old room back into a bedroom, not out of guilt, but necessity. The home office idea failed because Dad would get drunk and spend hours in there, looking at old photos he'd hidden from Melissa. She found him passed out in there multiple times, clutching Mom's recipe box that he'd apparently rescued from the donation pile without telling anyone. The neighbors started talking after Dad got into a fistfight with Tyler's basketball coach. The coach had banned Dad from games due to his behavior, and Dad showed up at his house to confront him. The police were called, but no charges were filed. Still, it was enough to tarnish Melissa's carefully crafted reputation in the neighborhood. Tyler's behavior changed too. He stopped bringing friends over, embarrassed by Dad's condition. He started staying at his biological father's house more often, leaving Ashley to deal with the chaos at home. Melissa's response was to start planning a move back to her hometown, talking about fresh starts and better opportunities for the kids. When Ashley finished talking, she pulled something from her bag, a small, worn notebook. It was Mom's gardening journal, where she'd kept notes about her flowers. Ashley had found it while cleaning and kept it hidden from Melissa. She thought I should have it. That small act of kindness broke something in me. I hugged her and told her none of this was her fault. The journal was hard to read at first. Mom's handwriting, her little doodles of flowers, her notes about which plants needed extra care, it all brought back memories I'd been trying to suppress. But Uncle Rob and Aunt Maria helped me turn it into something positive. We started a small garden in their backyard, using Mom's notes as a guide. The first purple iris bloomed last week. My old soccer coach reached out recently. He's starting a youth program and asked if I'd help coach the younger kids. It feels good to be back on the field, teaching kids the same drills Mom used to run with me. Some of the parents remembered her from when she coached, and they share stories about her enthusiasm and kindness. I've been doing well in my classes and even made the dean's list. Uncle Rob and Aunt Maria surprised me with a used car, nothing fancy, just a reliable Honda that gets me to school and work. Dad would have never supported this. He always said Tyler should get the first car because of his basketball schedule. The restraining order has kept Dad away physically, but flying monkeys still try to reach out. Melissa seems to have given up on her smear campaign, probably too busy dealing with Dad's drinking and planning their move. Some relatives still play peacemaker, but most have accepted my decision. Grandma even defended me at a recent family gathering when Aunt Linda started talking about ungrateful children. Life isn't perfect, but it's stable. I'm learning to live with the grief of losing both my mom and the dad I once knew. Some days are harder than others, but I'm getting there. Update 3. A year has passed since my original post, and this will probably be my final update. The biggest change is that Melissa finally left Dad. She moved back to her hometown with Tyler and Ashley about 2 months ago. The official story was that she got a better job offer, but everyone knows it was Dad's drinking that drove her away. From what I've heard through family, she'd been planning the move for months, secretly enrolling the kids in new schools and looking for houses. The day after Melissa left, Dad showed up at Uncle Rob's house again, despite the restraining order. He was sober this time, which was new. He had a box of my old things, photos, trophies, and Mom's recipe box. He left them on the porch with a letter. Uncle Rob asked if I wanted to read it, but I said no. Some wounds are still too fresh. Grandma visits Dad regularly now. She says the house is a mess, with moving boxes still half packed and empty bottles everywhere. The basketball court is overgrown with weeds, and Mom's garden space is just bare dirt. Sometimes she finds him sitting there, staring at the empty space where Mom's irises used to bloom. Ashley still texts occasionally. She seems happier in their new town, though she misses some things about our old neighborhood. Tyler enrolled in a new school and joined their basketball team. Neither of them blame me for what happened anymore. They understand now how their mom's actions and Dad's choices tore our family apart. I'm doing better than ever. My grades are good, and I recently got promoted to assistant manager at the bookstore. I'm planning to transfer to a 4-year university next fall. Uncle Rob and Aunt Maria are even talking about moving closer to the campus I'm interested in, though I keep telling them they don't have to. The garden in their backyard is flourishing. Mom's purple irises multiplied, and now we have enough to share with neighbors. Every time they bloom, I think about how Mom would say that flowers, like love, grow best when shared. She was right about that, just like she was right about so many things. Sometimes I dream about the dad I had right after Mom died, the one who tried so hard to keep her memory alive. I miss him almost as much as I miss her. But that dad is gone, replaced by someone I don't recognize anymore. Maybe someday I'll be ready to read his letter or hear his side of the story, but for now, I'm focused on building my own life and keeping Mom's memory alive in my own way. That's it, Reddit. Thank you for following this journey with me.